The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
6 minutes after 12, we're open line on Mannin Line till 1 today. You're on the air by calling 66 13 68. Text 166 177, WhatsApp 166 177 as well, or email studio@manxradio.com. By the way, if you're going to WhatsApp us, you'll need us in your contacts. 166 177. Loads of messages. Friday is always really big for messages. I think people get stuff off their chest on a Friday, so I've got tons of messages to get through from Friday, including this one. There was a debate about the height of a building and the fact that 14-storey building in Douglas on the Lord Street, whether or not it goes ahead, we don't know, because the original person pulled the planning permission and the other partner is apparently going to put it back in, and it will go ahead. Anyway, we were talking about a 14-storey building, and we figured out the highest buildings, residential ones, were King's Court in Ramsey, but then again the power station chimney is quite high, and the energy from waste plant is quite high as well. Got a note in from 417 who said, Andy, regarding the debate about the height of buildings, a 185 metre wind turbine is roughly equivalent to 60 stories. 60 stories. And the MUA plan to put up 4 on the top of the hill at Erie Staines. So it would make the debate about a 14-storey building a bit redundant. Well, ish. Yes, we get the picture. And what about those 300-metre high ones that Orsted want to put on? How many stories is that? Could you please remind cyclists, says Alison, that old railway lines are not their personal racetrack. I'm a dog walker and feel unsafe sometimes as cyclists don't let you know when they're coming behind you and travelling very fast. These paths are for the enjoyment of everybody, walkers, runners, dogs, as well as cyclists. To cyclists everywhere, thank you. Is it time to get the high-vis out? Is it time to get the Lycra out? I don't know, you tell me. Robert's on now. Hi, Robert.
Hi, a bit of a square wheels connection here, unfortunately. I'm just on a bus, so bear with me a second.
Right,
but
okay.
I was just wondering, is there any Lafayette jam that they still do with the parish churches and things like that, given away at the fairs?
What jam is that again?
Well, it's a type of strawberry jam, I believe.
Right.
It comes from the south of the island.
Right.
It's very good at what it does. But I mean, you could buy loads of it. You could buy, £1,028 if you wanted
and
to.
we're wondering who's selling it then.
Well, I imagine you can get it from the stores. They used to sell them at Safeway, didn't they? But they don't do it anymore. So I was just wondering about the jam content.
Okay. And what's the name of the jam again, Robert?
Well, I heard it was Lafayette jam.
Lafayette. Okay.
Lafayette jam.
All
yeah.
right. Well, we'll find out about that. Well, if there's a special jam for the Isle of Man, I'm all for that, Robert, as much as possible.
All right. No worries.
Good to hear from you.
Okay. Have a good one.
Thanks for that. And Julian joins us now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Oh, what a lovely... how long has this weather been going on? It's beautiful,
I'm trying to remember the last time it rained. It was weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think somebody commented that it's extreme weather, but I think they won't remember 1975, will they, Andy?
Extreme dryness, that's what it is. Extreme dryness.
Yeah, although they say that global warming will result in more moisture being trapped in the atmosphere, meaning more rain and floods.
I don't know.
I'm confused on that
one. It changes every time somebody says something. Either we're going to get warmer or we're going to get hotter. I'm not quite sure. I don't know which expert to listen to, Julian.
I know. Gives you a headache. Out of interest, I noticed we talked about Wetherspoons coming to the island.
Yeah.
I noticed that BlackRock Investments have recently, in the last few months, obtained and acquired enough shares to get control of strategic direction of that business. That's interesting.
Oh, wow. And what do you think they'll do with it? They're in America, aren't they, BlackRock?
Well, they're what's known as a supranational or a hyper-global company, I think, which is one of the problems these days. I think that's probably why America is doing their tariffs, because I think they're fed up with large global companies that don't really have any kind of loyalty to the locals.
Right.
They go around doing all these huge shops all over the world, and they don't really seem to mind, do they, about what the locals think? But anyway, one other thing, by the way, do you remember an old exchange between Lady Astor and Winston Churchill?
Oh, yes, the one about being ugly and drunk.
Well, the other one, where she said, if you were my husband, I'd poison your tea, to which he replied, if you were my wife, I'd drink it.
Well, can you imagine?
Oh, she wasn't threatening him, though, was she? I assume that was sort of a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daily Mail Online were talking about if the Isle of Man has woke.
Oh, I saw
they
that.
Erroneously said,
yeah, I saw that article.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they erroneously said UK, whereas they should have said Crown Dependency. But it does make you wonder. According to several sources, there are 8 hallmarks of wokeism. So I suppose the litmus test is the 8. I'll just rattle them off. 1, social justice and equality, pushing for systemic change in areas such as education, healthcare and employment. 2, focus, whatever that means, on identity politics, including race, gender, transgenderism, or sexual orientation. 3 is cultural sensitivity and inclusion, and being sensitive, whatever that means, to language and behaviours that might be seen as harmful or exclusionary. 4 is a commitment to anti-racism and anti-discrimination, advocating for inclusive policies that aim to dismantle racial hierarchies, well, whatever that means. 5, a critique of power structures, including capitalism, with an emphasis on dismantling or reforming. So we're going to dismantle capitalism, apparently. The 6th one is use of cancel culture for perceived wrongdoing. What's perceived wrongdoing, Andy?
It's what they imagine you think you've done that you don't know you've done.
Yes, it's kind of like someone's opinion, really. And I suppose that use of cancel culture was kind of where the hate speech and the access zone bills are sort of going through, aren't they, really? Where there's the possibility that you can cancel somebody's opinion. The 7th one, environmental justice and marginalised communities being disproportionately affected by climate change. And the last one, social media activism being used as a primary tool for raising awareness alongside school curricula. So if that's the litmus test of those 8, I mean, have we heard any of those social justice and equality, identity politics, inclusion, this type of thing? I suppose we have heard some of those things over here, haven't we?
I don't know. Most people on the Isle of Man are bothered about 2 things, Julian, whether the mountain road's open or whether the boat's going.
Yeah, and the state of the roads. So, this is, if that article is sort of saying about, is it woke, there does seem to be some indicators based on, I mean, these are left-leaning publications that I'm looking at, and they do say that. So,
wow.
It
must have been a slow day at the Daily Mail.
Well, yeah. Lots of words that are used, like resilience, and then ESG, just transition. Transitioning to what, I'm not sure yet. I have been asking, but I haven't found out yet. Sustainability, the journey, this type of thing. Carbon credits and carbon offsetting, which is good for you if you can afford them, of course.
Are you feeling woke today, Julian?
Not really, no.
Okay. Right.
I'm awake, but I'm not woke, if you know what I mean.
All right. Good to hear from you. Thanks for that today.
Thanks, Andy.
Cheers. So it's 12:15 now, and the news, I don't know whether you heard Phil Gorn yesterday on Perspective. He was talking to Brian Brumby and Robert Murray. They both run farms in the north of the Isle of Man, and they reckon that the farming sector says that 95% of the food eaten on the Isle of Man is imported. Get that? 95 out of 100 things that we eat are imported, meaning that local producers of food are almost totally reliant on the export market. And it's led to some in the industry saying they feel like second-class citizens, and they're basically worried about the next generation of farmers. And we've had this time and time again when talking to Claire Barber, when talking to the Manx NFU, just about saying that sure, there are some rich farmers on the Isle of Man, but they are in the minority. Most people, most family farms are on a knife edge, and they farm because they love it. And again, some people absolutely adore what they do, and farmers really enjoy what they do. It's a way of life. It's not a job. It's a vacation. It's something that you do all the time. But as far as the finances are concerned, they're perilous, rocky, in trouble. So I do wonder whether the next time you go to buy something to eat at the supermarket or at a shop, whether you think that you would buy Manx and pay possibly a little bit more, or would you go for what you perceive as value for money, the cheapest price? Just asking. Text, email, call, WhatsApp, and I'd recommend you have a listen to that programme. Perspective is at manxradio.com. It's on the listen again. Brian Brumby and Robert Murray. And Tony's with us now. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Oh, what a day today. What a day to be inside.
Yeah, but you're stuck inside a nice studio. Air-conditioned, no doubt.
Well,
and
there we
missing
are.
all the sunshine.
Well, there we are. I wouldn't say it's hardly a chaise long, but I take your point.
Yeah, well, you know, you could always look outside and wish you were there.
Anyway.
Right, what I called for was, I want to just turn over the old chestnut of DOI. So the new person in charge, Dr. Michelle Hayward, has brought in 30-mile-an-hour limit, dredged the harbour, and she's just done this, but she can't have made all the decisions for it because she wasn't in place. So they conveniently decided they'd carry forward with this 30-mile-an-hour limit, which I wasn't aware that was going to come, and I doubt if half the population is. So my question is, why did Michelle Hayward just charge ahead with this instead of looking at it and saying, is this a good idea? Could it be that they'd already bought the signs? I don't know.
Well,
they haven't told us. And they haven't told us how much they've spent on the signs versus how much it's going to cost to put them up. So they're just spending money like water, as usual, because that's what DOI do. They have a bee in their head, the bonnet, and they just decide to go ahead with it. Now, my question is, the previous person in charge, I think Chris Thomas, is it?
Well, there have been so
Before
many.
Michelle Hayward?
I think.
Well, that's the whole point. They keep changing them out because every time they get to something, it's just like, oh, I'll hand the baton over to you and you can carry this through. That needs to stop because we need to have people who are responsible and also held to account. Now, Michelle Hayward has said, well, we're going to go ahead with this and we're just going to ignore all your opinions because that's what we do. The DOI doesn't have to ask anybody for anything. So, we come back to the same thing. So why have we got a minister in charge of something that makes all its own decisions? Why don't we just find out who's the chief head of DOI and we'll vote for him, or have a few candidates and vote for them? Because obviously the ministers are not in charge. So we have a government that's not in charge of its ministries because they just do what they want.
I'm sure it won't have escaped Michelle Hayward's notice the fact that being the minister, the minister at the Department of Infrastructure, puts you very much in the firing line. I mean, last time at the last general election, two former DOI ministers lost their seat in the House of Keys, Tim Baker and Ray Harmer. And it may be said that the public has a long memory, so maybe Michelle Hayward, is basically hitting the ground running in Department of Infrastructure because she wants to get things done. I take your point about the fact that there may be senior civil servants within DOI who, if you like, formulate the policy, but we'll see. And really, at the end of all this, I mean, how will we know whether this new speed limit actually works? What do you think will be the metric of finding out whether or not it's been a good idea?
Well, it won't be, because there won't be any monitoring, because the police are not going to do it.
And that's the
They
point.
haven't got enough resources.
That's the point.
So what's the point in spending £400,000 to put something in place that they can all point at and say, oh, look, we're trying to save lives?
So
That's
they're basically relying on the good nature of the majority of motorists, and of course the majority of motorists are good-natured, but there are a few idiots who don't take any notice. So they don't take any notice of the current speed limit. So why will they take any notice of the new ones?
Well, they won't. The whole point of this is no thought was put into it. This is once again, I think this is what we should do, meaning I rather than we. And then Michelle Hayward has just gone ahead and, we'll just rubber stamp all that, which is what the government does all the time. So once again, we have a situation, who didn't dredge the harbour and why wasn't it dredged? Because they bought a vessel that was too big. Again, a DOI-driven decision. Not by the steam packet, that was driven by DOI. We want a bigger boat. As per the steam packet, that's what they said. It was DOI that drove it. So you bought a bigger boat, which now can't get into anywhere in half tide. You've moved the dock. That was a brilliant move, because now you can't dock at certain times of the day. And you just question who is making these decisions in DOI and who is monitoring it? Because obviously the people in charge who are supposed to be monitoring it, i.e. the ministers, are not. What I see is a complete failure in government, because the government is supposed to manage their departments. And what they're doing is just doing what the departments ask them.
I had a note over Tony, I had a note over the weekend about the dredging of Douglas Harbour. And it was from a guy called Peter, who said the dredging of Douglas Harbour is really important as far as the Isle of Man steam packet is concerned. But remember, there's a very, very, very important boat that comes into Douglas Harbour, and that is the petrol boat. And if Douglas Harbour isn't dredged sufficiently, then it may be the fact that the petrol boat, because when the petrol boat comes in, that is very, very strictly monitored. So let's hope that it's dredged where the petrol boat comes in.
I wouldn't count on that, Andy, but there you go.
Well, the thing is sorry, go ahead.
No, who in actuality within DOI is responsible for that?
The head of
Michelle Hayward?
No, the head of harbours. I'm trying to remember who the head of harbours is. I'm sure somebody will tell me. Because
well, if the head of harbours is in charge of it, shouldn't they have gone to somebody before in the DOI and said, we need to do this? Yeah. But obviously, maybe DOI knew about it but didn't bother. We don't know, because none of the government, none of the department is transparent. None of it. If you think about it, we didn't know about the boat until they'd actually got it here. And then you point out, this is a bit big. Oh, no, it's the right boat, and we've had more disruption in sailing with that vessel than any other time in history that I know of.
Yeah, point taken. I mean, the fact is, it's a lovely boat. It's a gorgeous boat. It really is very, very nice. But as you say, it may just be a tiny bit too big.
About 100 feet too big, I'd say.
Okay.
They should have got something like the Ben McCree that was just a little bit maybe more modern, but something like the Ben McCree that can get in and out easily in most ports. Because this thing is so big, it's not going to get in and out easily.
Okay. All right,
Tony. It's a small cruise liner.
All
anyway,
right.
I wait to see what Michelle Hayward is going to tell us, because I don't think she's told us very much at the moment about what the plans of DOI are.
Okay. All right, Tony.
Nice to know, wouldn't it?
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that.
Take care, Andy. And make sure you don't get lack of vitamin D from not having any sunshine.
I'll be out in the sunshine.
Cellar you're in.
Don't you worry. Thanks for calling today. And John said... many Manx products available on the Isle of Man, in the Isle of Man supermarkets and Robinsons, but obviously 84,000 customers can't compete with 68 million in the UK. Point taken, John, but the fact is, it depends on your point of view. Do we want Manx farming to continue? Do we want the agriculture industry on the Isle of Man to be healthy and vibrant and profitable for the people in it? Because remember, they don't just do the food, they maintain the countryside as well. Can you tell, says Chris, tell everybody the Manx Aviation and Military Museum is open during the Easter school holidays from 10 till 4:30. More than happy to pass that on. David is with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Andy. Just a conundrum we've got now because the Home Affairs Minister made a statement now that says, regarding the 20 mile an hour speed limit, I'm only paraphrasing what was on the internet, it's not going to be enforced. So now we have a law that's going to be made that's 20 mile an hour is the speed limit. So how can we prosecute anybody?
Yeah, I just wonder whether they're waiting for something to go wrong, whether they're waiting for something to happen. Stay with me for this. I.e., if there's an accident and retrospectively the police can prove somebody was doing more than 20 miles per hour, that they'll then be prosecuted for that, i.e. if somebody crashes into a car above a certain speed or what have you. But at the moment it just doesn't seem very clear.
It's not a great of resources for the police if we're waiting for accidents to happen there.
You would have thought, David, that they would have spoken to Mr. Foster in the first place, the Chief Constable.
Do you know what? I really can't believe that. You can't make this up. Even my granddaughter, we pull out fairy book stories, and I'm just wondering whether they're going to have one about the Isle of Man and the Council of Ministers and what decisions they're making. I just wonder, did any of the other Council of Ministers say anything? Or where did it come from? Where was it going to? And was, of course, Jane Paul Wilson's the Home Affairs Minister, isn't she? Now, she's been fine. We're going to get camera recognition. We're going to get the ANPR, aren't we, for number plate recognition?
Do you think this is a back door for putting speed cameras in? For them to say, well, obviously the police haven't got the time or money to do this. We'll put some cameras up. Do you think this is what this is about?
Somebody said to me today that's the ultimate aim. And then the other thing is that the money goes into then Treasury, doesn't it? And it can go anywhere then when it goes back in Treasury. But are we going to have where people do cut cameras down? I'm not suggesting it, but at the end of the day, putting bags on top of cameras to make them not work. We live in the Isle of Man. We all know each other, or a fair amount of people we know each other. And shouldn't we be sensible when we're going through villages? I can see the point, like in Onken there, the 20 mile an hour through the village. But why stop it at Blackberry Lane? It's 30 up to Blackberry Lane and past the governor's house. And then it goes to 20 through the village, but doesn't. It's 30 then at Lakeside. Doesn't square up. And I still haven't had an answer back from the DOI to say, why did they do that? They never discuss it with the local authorities. Not that we're concerned. We definitely are, because people are asking, where are all these signs going? Is it going to be at my house? Because don't forget, there's 2 zones in Onken, Birch Hill, Ballacurry, and there's small ones as well. And they've all got when you go back onto the main roads, they've got 30 miles an hour on the back of the sign.
What's the speed limit on Royal Avenue? Is that 20?
It's 30.
It's 30, yeah.
I would say it's 30. Because, funny enough, there's no signs there to say that, but you drive to the conditions, don't you? You come towards the school. I always see the one at Braddon, the big flashing lights, 20, 20, 20. You know, sensible ideas at schools when kids are out. But don't forget, I was going to go on to another subject there is, what are we doing with this green initiative with all those schools that are going to be empty in the summer? Could be producing electricity for the grid.
That's the point. That's the point. And how many schools have got solar panels on available roofs? I can't think of. I mean, surely they'll.
Any?
No, I can't think of any really. To be quite honest. Okay.
Well, what would 400,000 do? Would it get 2 schools done? and contribute to the economy we've got. And maybe the other thing, Andy, we need to talk about sometime is when we have Timble Day, should we protest a little bit more or invite some guests over who really know how to do things? All right?
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling, David.
Cheers now.
All right, cheers now. 039 said, can you tell me what's happened to the bus from the Liverpool boat to Liverpool 1? There is no boat. There is no bus there. Is this true? People are walking both ways with suitcases. Well, it's okay at the moment because it's nice weather. Well, I say it's okay, but I mean, if you've got heavy suitcases, it's a bit of a schlep. But a long walk in the wet. Now, the steam packet apparently say it's Liverpool Council. Who's responsible for the bus from the Liverpool boat terminal, half-tide dock, to Liverpool 1? Anybody know? Have you been on it? Or was it working at the weekend? I feel sorry for anybody bringing a dog on holiday to the Isle of Man, as there's nowhere allowed in the park or on the beach. So where can you take a dog to give it a run? Douglas City seems to be the worst, says 350. Let's get back to the lines now. Howard's with us. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Andy. I just listened to David there saying about writing a book about the Isle of Man government. It has been written already. It's called The Comedy of Errors.
Okay.
But that's not what I was coming up. I was listening to... You mentioned that you'd had a note over the weekend about the petrol tank, the fuel tanker.
Well, yes, and this person said, Douglas Harbour isn't just where the steam packets berth, then there's obviously where the petrol boat comes in. Yeah.
Well, I can remember, I don't know that you can, the Cozen gas butane vessel, the tanker.
Yes, I do.
Used to berth on the end of the tongue. She was tied up on the end of the tongue and discharged their cargo there. That's opposite what was Newsom's. Just down below that, on the next berth, where those buildings had all been knocked down, was the Esso berth. And their ships used to come in, and they would tie up and discharge the cargo there. And just below what is now the Lifton Bridge, many years ago, Manx Petroleum's had a depot there and used to bring fuel in, and I'm not sure whether the platform's still there, but there used to be a connection in the wall and would pump to where the garage is. So common sense prevailed, and all these items, well, the one at the below the swing bridge was done away with. The Esso boat, Esso pulled off the island, but the butane tanker and the other vessels all went down to what was used to be the cattle berth is now the tanker berth on the Battery Pier for safety. And yes, when the tankers are coming into the island, whether it's for the gas, the butane gas, it's still used here, and Manx Petroleum's, they do have to, obviously, because they're fully loaded, to watch the tidal aspect. So you'll see it sitting in the bay until such a time that it's safe to come in and berth down on the Battery Pier to discharge the cargo.
Yeah.
Naturally, as she's discharging, she's becoming lighter and will rise with the tide and come clear of the bottom.
But as you say, when she arrives here, she's fully laden.
Oh, yes, very much so. And she's laden to the point it's always has been. I've discharged dozens of tankers down there when I worked for Manx. But there was always... came in at a certain point in the tide, so she didn't bottom out. And Manx Petroleum's and Shell used to work out the weight of the tanker between them, so that when she came in on the tide with a safe working depth. But as people think automatically it's a steam packet, but there are other vessels. And where are they going to discharge all this equipment for the wind turbines?
Yes, that's a good point.
Because they'll have to have those big, tall gas tanks that were down by the lifeboat station. I remember them coming off because there was a special vessel came in and tied bow in right in that corner, and they took those tanks off into what is now a car park there and put them up in the yard. I don't know if they're still there, but it's going to have to be something like that. So that whole area is going to have to be, well, dredged and kept to a depth where these vessels can come in with the heavy lifts and heavy things. And it's just crossed my mind now, is this why there's so much controversy between the lifeboats and the harbour boards, whether that they're not going to allow the lifeboat station to put another slip there because they're going to need that area to bring this heavy vessels in.
Interesting, yeah.
But as I said, it was common sense to put those ships down at the end on the battery pier. And as I said to Chris, when they were up in the inner harbour, the harbour's naturally dried out. So those vessels were sitting there in the middle of Douglas with explosives on, basically.
No health and safety
they were
then.
sitting there for as many as 5 or 6 hours before the next tide come in.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that, Howard. Just one more question. And ever since we've talked about this, I get a couple every day. Is the camera obscura opening for Easter?
Weather permitting, yes. We've had various pieces of work done, and I've been up and checked all the inside of it, and she's all in working condition again now. And weather permitting, we'll be up there on Easter weekend.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it, Howard. Thanks for calling today.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye now. Andrea on 538 said, Michelle Haywood isn't in charge of the DOI. The chief officer is Emily Curfey. The minister is just the spokesman. So Emily Curfey is the chief officers, they're called now. I don't think they're CEOs anymore. And I think the director of highways is Mr. Robinson. So Emily Curfey is the person in charge of infrastructure. Adam's with us. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Randy. How are you today?
Well, terrific, thank you.
Oh, that's good. I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions. Do you know, what is the situation with the Tavia Group development down at the Villiers site, where they're supposed to be building a travel lodge and
the
also
Villiers.
a...
Well, they look like they're about 3 or 4 metres down. They're digging down. I don't know whether it's for foundations or an underground car park.
Right, well, that's good. So they have actually started...
oh, crikey,
They have actually started development down there.
Oh,
well, that's
blimey,
excellent,
yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's brilliant that something's going ahead, that's been planned for so long and it's been derelict for so long, and now something's going ahead. That's fantastic, isn't it, that something's actually going ahead in the island?
Well, when I came to the Isle of Man full-time in 1998, I remember people saying to me, you know, that empty bit that's next to the Royal Bank of Scotland, that'll be built on within the next couple of years. And here we are 27 years later, and it's just happening.
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be getting built back when they first knocked it down back in the early 90s, wasn't it? And they were supposed to be developing offices all the way along to match those that are on the end there next to the Victoria clock. And Andy, the other question I was going to ask, why don't some of the Manx farmers who are doing not so well get on the rewilding movement that's going on in the UK and places like NEP, which started really with the NEP estate, which was a bit of a Department of Environment and Agriculture kind of experiment really, which was funded by Isabella Tree and her husband, who's very well known in the UK now. She's written an excellent book called Wilding, which I can recommend, and it's all about putting the countryside back to woodland pasture,
right?
And returning native mammals to the landscape. So the Isle of Man doesn't really have many native large mammals, but it does have, I suppose, back in the day there was elks and things, and you could possibly introduce deer or something to perform the role that they used to do in the countryside. And it's about putting the countryside back, restoring natural systems in the countryside, and allowing it to return to woodland pasture, and which is the originally back in medieval times. That was what was known as forest.
I would imagine the farmers would ask, what's in it for them?
Well, it's proved to be much more productive when you do that, because you're creating so many different ecological niches which all provide food sources for different animals. You can have pigs and things in the landscape. And you don't have to look, it's much less intensive. You don't have to look after the animals to the same extent that you do on a working farm. It doesn't involve the massive amounts of insecticide and pesticides, and it's good for nature, so it'd be good for the UNESCO biosphere image, and it also proves to be more productive. The land actually supports many more animals than can be supported on intensive farm, so therefore they can make a damn sight more money out of it, because a lot of the Manx farms are not arable farms, are they? They're sort of livestock and sheep farms or cattle farms doing milk and dairy. So I think with the UNESCO Biosphere, it's something the Energy and Sustainability Centre should be looking at, is rewilding and wilding as a way forward for farming for those farmers in the Isle of Man who are not making enough money. Yeah,
interesting. Okay, all right. Appreciate it, Adam. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Andy.
Good to hear from you. Andy on 384 said Tim Baker and Ray Harmer are names on the plaque at the Liverpool landing stage. Is that right? Douglas Harbour dredging is the responsibility of the DOI. And the dredging of Douglas has failed to the new operator. The previous operators of the dredger have posted on Facebook that they never ever had any problem keeping the harbour dredged. 223. Well, how it got where it is, of course, is a bit late now, because we are where we are. The Tarrow Ussher is being repaired. We had to pay for the other dredger to come across from Heysham, and we're in a situation where the harbour that regularly needs dredging isn't being dredged as often. Now, if you're familiar with aviation, you'll know of something called a NOTAM, which is a notice to airmen, which basically is, if you like, the standing orders, whatever's going on at the time. Well, there's also something called notice to mariners, which means that you're supposed to advise mariners who may be using your jurisdiction of anything that is out of the ordinary. So we're presuming that the harbour authorities will be issuing notice to mariners about the state of Douglas Harbour and about the state of the silt and the level of the silt in Douglas Harbour. Because while ever stuff is washing in or washing down from the hills down the river, it's going to continue. And quite what happens in the future, well, we'll have to see. A message in that just says, I can't wait for the local elections, which are happening, is it 2 weeks on Thursday? Hey! Now, some people have got in unopposed, but there are going to be some big competitions, and anybody who's standing, we wish everybody well. Why do people assume that MHKs are the actual people pushing all these schemes and changes through? Barring private bills, of course. The civil servants, says Joe, are the ones who are pushing schemes and agendas, not the MHKs. They're simply the poster boys and girls for the civil service departments. Once a top civil servant has made a decision, that's it, says Joe. Done and dusted.
Hi, Liz. I see you've had your garage converted. We're desperate for more room.
Yes. Come through and have a look. John called Manx Property Conversions. We now have an extra bedroom, but it could be another reception room, kids' playroom or office. They also did our conservatory roof last year. We were so impressed, we got them back to convert the garage.
Wow, I need that. What's their number again?
Call MPC on 450 500. That's 450 500. Or find them on Facebook at Manx Property Conversions.
As the hot air balloon lifted off, Ellie's financial future rose too. Secure, steady and full of possibility. All thanks to Skipton International Guernsey and their fixed 4.4% AER saving rate until March 31st, 2026 on deposits of £100,000 or more. Let your money soar with confidence. Join Ellie and secure your rate today at Skipton.
For details on Skipton savings products, call 01481 730 730 or visit skiptoninternational.com. No withdrawals allowed until maturity. Interest paid annually and upon maturity. Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the GFSC and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. See dcs.gg.
Don't miss the Cane & Wicker furniture range in store at Millichaps of Ramsey. Includes sofas, chairs and swivel rocker chairs, dining sets and coffee tables with designs featuring quality frames, beautiful fabrics including Laura Ashley designs and comfortable fully sprung seats with leather bindings. Plus, we have special offer suites and a huge range of window blinds to complement. Discover exclusive Cane & Wicker furniture in store now at Millichaps of Ramsey.
Belfast is buzzing, and the Isle of Man Steam Packet's Belfast routes are back so you can see for yourself. But how about we make your Irish adventure even more fun by giving you £1,000 to spend on a Belfast experience? We've teamed up with the Steam Packet to bring you this incredible prize. Check out the videos we took on our social pages for a bit of Irish inspiration and for your chance to win. And listen to Manx Radio all this week to get in the draw. The Belfast is buzzing £1,000 prize with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
14 minutes before 1. They're not enforcing the 30 mile per hour speed limits, and they won't enforce the 20 mile per hour speed limits, says NT. They'll say it's because they can't spare the manpower, and so they'll install automatic speed cameras and criminalise every driver who breaks the law, obviously, to ensure that there's another income stream. Income stream, of course, there will be because of prosecutions and fines. So by default, without enforcing the current limits, they'll produce more income from the motorist. And they think we don't notice. Thank you, 109. We've had a 20 mile per hour speed limit in Laxey for years. Nobody seems to take any notice, says Christine. Apart from the chimneys, the tallest building that contains people, apparently, is the control tower at Ronaldsway, says Paul, ex-firefighter. It's 32 metres up to the balcony. There's the glass-fronted control room where the controllers work. Before it opened, I took the fire service aerial ladder platform down there just to see if we could effect an external rescue, and we were at full extension to reach the outside balcony. The new turntable ladder will now well exceed the height of the building, so we've got the energy from waste plant, the power station, the Ronaldsway Tower, the highest residential at the moment we think is King's Court in Ramsey. This is ahead of this 14-storey thing that might be happening by Lord Street. The 20 mile per hour limits are just an excuse for speed and facial recognition cameras to enforce the 15-minute city. WhatsApp of 566. Just to remind people that in Wales, the deaths and injuries in urban areas have dropped by a third since 20 miles per hour was introduced last year. But I guess some would prefer 200 adults and children were in accidents if they can drive a bit faster. The figures don't lie. You need to read BBC Verified. All right. And remember, no matter where you are on the Isle of Man, it's no more than an hour away, even if you're in Castletown trying to get to Bride, says D. The trouble is the government hasn't issued any statistics, have they, as to how many accidents there are in these areas that are to have a new speed limit on them. So at the moment, I'm guessing in lots of areas, the speed is limited by the amount of traffic, i.e. the flow of traffic slows everything down. In many places, and somebody mentioned Laxey, often Laxey is far less than 20 miles per hour because there's a lot of traffic in Laxey and people park on one side of the road. Laurie Hooper posted a very useful summary on the 20 mile per hour limit over the weekend. It was voted for by Tynwald in 2020 when Michelle Hayward wasn't even elected. She's just doing what Tynwald voted for. Very harsh to blame her. Of course, a motion can be brought to overturn the decision, but it was a clear vote and it happened 5 years ago. I feel sorry, says Steve, for Michelle. She's just executing the will of the previous Tynwald court. Thank you for that. And last week we talked about this 14-storey building, and there's somebody said, is it true you can't have a building higher than the nearest church spire? So we looked into this. There's something called the spire myth. The idea that new buildings, this is in the UK, can't be built higher than the highest church spire is more than a myth or a misunderstanding. Than a rule. Historically, there were some local planning laws that restricted the height of buildings in certain areas to maintain a balanced skyline, particularly against churches and cathedrals. However, there is no nationwide law in the UK that strictly prohibits building higher than the highest church spire. In some historic areas, there may be height restrictions in place to preserve the aesthetics or historical significance of certain landmarks, but these are usually addressed through planning regulations rather than a hard and fast rule about spire. spires. Modern building regulations focus on safety, accessibility and the environment rather than specific height restrictions relative to church spires.
Get ready for more with Manx Telecom. With more data, more speed and more countries included, Go Roam is the island's only mobile tariff range to cover 37 countries with unlimited speeds on all plans. Upgrade in store or call 624-624. That's 624-624. Visit mt.im/Go Roam for details, terms and conditions.
Bright headlights on the road can hold you back. Holmes & Davidson Opticians present an advanced solution, our cutting-edge road lens coating. Significantly reducing glare, clarity is enhanced, driving confidence elevated. Experience safer and more confident vision. Trust Holmes & Davidson Opticians to keep you safer on the roads. Book your consultation today at holmesanddavidsonopticians.co.uk or call 676 230.
Road racing is back on the island, and Manx Radio 1368 will be an essential part of it, bringing live practice and race commentary, news, travel and more to the island and the world on AM, online and digital. With airtime, sponsorship and digital advertising options available now, it's your chance to reach a global motorsports audience. So contact our sales team on 682 620 or on sales@manxradio.com. Manx Radio 1368, the best biking station in the world.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
It's 8 minutes now before 1. By coincidence, 422 says the introduction of VNPR, visual number plate recognition, is progressing. If it's not used for prosecutions, why is it needed? Well, the Chief Constable was on Mannin Line last year, and one of the reasons, and this is for having it at the port, they basically want to check on people coming to the Isle of Man, and particularly the frequency of cars coming to the Isle of Man. So let's just say the number plate recognition picks up a vehicle that's maybe been here 6 times in a year, and maybe with the same 2 people inside it. Well, they'd want to know what that's all about, because who knows, it could be a drug dealer, could be just somebody who likes the Isle of Man, but you don't know. So I think that's one of the reasons that the police want VNPR, although they probably can explain it better themselves. Policing the 20 miles per hour is no different from policing the 30 miles per hour. And Sue in Belaf tells me on 761 Manx farming has to continue, because if anything major happens, like no boats, foot and mouth, or the worst, a conflict, we probably have to use locally grown food, says Sue. I'm assuming in all this, by the way, the Home Affairs Department has got a strategy for this, to find out exactly what it is that we would do if we couldn't get food from across. And bearing in mind, the farming sector says 95% of the food eaten on the Isle of Man is imported. I mentioned yesterday with Phil Gorn, Robert Murray and Brian Brumby, who run farms in the north, were on talking about this. Well, let's have a listen to Brian Brumby, and first, Robert Murray.
I'm a firm believer, to be honest with you, that farmers even now should be paid a fair price for what they produce. They shouldn't need subsidy. There's enough money in the food chain for a farmer to have his fair share, and unfortunately that is not happening. And you hear prices now on stuff, and they haven't gone up in 10-15 years in the real world. Great, you talk about, obviously I was a cereal farmer, and we were knocking around the £150 a tonne for grain 15 years ago, and really we should be looking at £300 or £400 a tonne now, and we're nowhere near that. And yeah, it's frightening. I just really feel for the next generation of farmers they're keen, they're really good at what they do, but they're really struggling, and we've got this global economy, and people just do not want to pay for food, and we as an industry can't carry on like that.
And of course the thinking, Brian, was that once production support went, if people wanted farmers to produce food, they would have to pay a viable amount to the farmers to encourage the farmers to do that. So rather than government encouraging farmers, it was going to be done through the marketplace, effectively.
Yeah, and in a bigger, more connected environment, that works. But the problem with the Isle of Man, you could argue in comparison to the UK, the farms are too small, which leads to inefficiencies. And then when you produced your product, 70% of what's produced by Manx farmers is exported, so it incurs the steam packet costs to export it. And 95% of the food eaten on the island is imported by the big supermarkets. So there's only a very small area where the Manx farmers can work and sell on an island, because to sell to one of the supermarkets, you've got to basically export to re-import through their systems.
That was Brian Brumby, and before that where you heard Robert Murray. This is something that's been going on for ages. You heard Robert Murray say that grain was £150 a tonne 10-15 years ago, and it should be something like 300 to 400, and it isn't. And maybe we're all just very used to cheap food. I mean, food is cheap. It is very cheap. I'm not saying all food is cheap, but the basics are cheap. However, let me take you back to COVID, by the way. Do you remember when COVID happened and we were in lockdown? Do you remember the three things that everybody ran like fury to get from the supermarket shelves? First and foremost, of course, toilet roll. Secondly, it was bottled water. And then, do you remember, pasta? You couldn't get pasta anywhere. They were looting the shelves for pasta. Now, I mean, I don't want to set any hairs running, but can you just imagine if we didn't have access to stuff? Can you just imagine? And if we then had to rely on Manx suppliers to provide stuff. It's just a thought, but I'm sure Home Affairs and the government have got it all in hand. The 20-mile-per-hour limit will result in the driving test examiners only able to do 4 tests per day. At the moment, they have to do 6 per day. They'll now have to employ another examiner to stop massive waiting lists. I've heard this directly from an employee at the test centre, says Darren. Will this have a similar effect on district nurses, health visitors? These will be hidden costs and consequences of what, says Darren, is a vanity project for a civil servant. And a note in from Tony, who said the reason that fewer people are killed because of cars nowadays is because of better brakes, seatbelts, airbags and crumple zones. Well, the story goes on, and so does Mannin Line tomorrow at high noon.
WINT